Hey guys, it's Bob Hertzog here with not only my favorite lender, but one of my favorite people in the world, Lizy Hoeffer. Most of you have heard her name before. If you haven't, then you're in for a treat today. Lizy has this thing going where she's the #1 female loan officer in the United States in terms of production, and has held that title for quite some time, and it's for a good reason. She's run a very successful team at CrossCountry Mortgage for several years now. I started working with Lizy in October of 2013. I actually had to go through my emails today to figure out how long ago we first made contact and started working together. And at that time, I was working with a pretty well-known, well-established group here in Phoenix, and she just kept bugging and harassing me to meet and have coffee, and we had coffee one day, and the rest is history. She's become not only my lender partner, but a very dear friend, and she's just got so much knowledge when it comes to leadership, as she has led a very large team of loan officers and all the support that goes along with it for many years. And she's always actually been kind of a mentor of mine when we were trying to figure out this whole new thing called real estate teams back in 2010, 11, 12. We kind of just winged it, and but I always had Lizy to bounce things off of and ideas and that sort of thing. So thought I'd bring her on today to talk about leadership, especially team leadership. She deals with a lot of the largest teams in the Valley right now, so she gets to see kind of what's going on with teams, and we're going to go over today some of the things she sees that in some of the more successful teams, as well as some of those teams that are struggling a little bit, where leadership might be an issue. She'll be able to kind of point things out that'll hopefully be helpful to all of you today. So anyway, Lizy, why don't you kind of tell us a little bit about you and where this whole thing started, and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Bob. What an awesome intro. I just want to say I'm not the #1 female unit producer anymore. I haven't been for about 2 years, but it was a really very proud moment in my career to be able to claim that. And so I'm very honored to be introduced to your audience and to your clients. And thank you for having me on here. You've been like one of the pinnacle people here in the Valley in terms of real estate, in terms of leadership. You're one of the first team leads, the first people to get into internet marketing, and you've just really been a trailblazer. So it's an honor for me. And I love that you consider me a great friend, because I consider you one too. So yeah.
You bet.
So
You're still #1 in my eyes, even though they're not giving you credit for it. I still think you're the best out there. So.
And I still want to be #1. So there's that.
All right.
So for those people who are new to me, I've been a Valley lender since 2008. And I started working in mortgage back in 2002. So in college. And I've run a really big team. I've run a really small team. I've worked before the boom, the bust, the Great Recession, the recovery, whatever we're going to call the COVID years. And then now, which has been the most challenging market I've literally worked in ever.
Interesting. So you think this is even tougher than 2010, 11, with the foreclosure short sale crisis?
I do. And mainly because in this market, it's been like more challenging to predict the trajectory of where rates are going.
Mm-hmm.
So what's been hard is that, the normal predictors that we would be able to say, employment, inflation, they just aren't markers for us to be able to dictate what's happening with mortgage-backed securities. It's hard to say like when we think recovery will come, and it's been the most unfamiliar time to me. At least back in the recession, it was like you basically had one main loan product, which is FHA, and it has very set requirements for who qualifies, who doesn't. And there were still a lot of opportunities for investors, a lot of opportunities for first-time home buyers. And even though it was scary times, the government really stepped in to create a lot of support for the real estate market. And this one feels like we are being stomped on by
Mhm.
the government as part of the plans to reduce inflation. So it's been tough.
Yeah, yeah. So go back to like where you started. How did you start as I mean, where'd you start?
So I have the unique experience of being from Nogales, Arizona.
Hmm.
And Nogales is like a very small produce town in the border with Mexico and the United States. And a lot of people stay there, which is fantastic. But in order to get out of there, my family was like, we have to go to college. So I worked my butt off to get into college without realizing how expensive going to college was. And, as part of a Hispanic family, it's very cultural that you send money back. And so not only did I have to pay for college, but I also had to figure out how to send money back home.
Hmm.
And so I looked in the paper, and the highest paying job was at a receptionist at a mortgage company. And so
And
that's how I got my
that
start.
was here in Phoenix, or was that
Yep, Gold Key Mortgage in Tempe
okay?
or Phoenix.
Wow. Are they still in business?
They are not in business, no.
Oh, okay. All right. So you started off as a receptionist there in what year?
Two
2002?
in October.
Okay. And then how did you kind of make your way up the ladder from there?
Well, at the time I worked for an internet marketing company, so they would buy these internet leads from places like Lending Tree and God knows where else. And I was tasked with shredding the dead leads. And I had listened to these guys call, and I some of them called, some of them really didn't. So they handed me this stack. They're like, "These are dead. Go ahead and shred them." And at the time, I was really looking for ways to maximize my income. And I had suggested that I didn't shred the leads, but instead I called them for free. And if I booked an appointment, if they would pay me $50 for every booked appointment. And I would call for like 2 hours a night. And it was the fastest way for me to double my income.
That's awesome. 50 bucks. That would be a bargain in today's world. Um, okay, so you started calling leads and then you'd turn the hot leads over to the loan officers at that point, and they would take it from there.
Yeah, so I got really good at doing it, and then I ran a call center, and then I kind of worked my way up. I mean, you can only do so much. Once I graduated, I became a processor, and then I became like an assistant and a processor to a very high producer. And then in 2008, processing kind of went way of the dodo bird, because of the Great Recession, no one could really afford anyone.
Mhm.
And so I became a loan officer at that time. And so that's actually when I started cutting my teeth in like actual sales.
Nice. Then I met you in 2013. So you were into it for about 5 years at that time, but you were still just pretty young in the business at 5 years, right? I mean, you didn't have a huge book of business at that time. You were still trying to build it. And
Yeah.
now look at where you're at. It's unbelievable. Um, so there was a question I was going to ask you. So obviously, I mean, you've got a lot of entrepreneurial spirit and have read and listened to a lot of the same and have been coached by a lot of the same people that I've run across. And there's always a point in any entrepreneur's life where kind of a light switch goes off like, okay, I need to work for myself. I need to build my own business. I need to, when you're young, you don't understand the word entrepreneur, but basically, I want to be an entrepreneur. I mean, in your life, can you think back to a time where you kind of went into business on your own or started to see the light of working for yourself?
Yeah. So my dad had a grocery store at a swap meet.
Hmm.
And if you've ever had the experience of going into a swap meet, that's like immigrant entrepreneurial central. Like, it's like all these different people from all these different small, like different cultures, different countries. They have all these different shops, and it's just very entrepreneurial and like the epitome of what I consider to be immigrant culture. So my grandparents immigrated from Mexico to the United States. My dad grew up in Mexico and moved to the United States, and so they're just very entrepreneurial people. Like you come here with very little, and you have to make money, and so that was just, I think, kind of part of my upbringing. But then being exposed in this environment and seeing how you could sell anything and make money, it really inspired me. I was like 9 at the time, And I remember wanting to start my own business, but I didn't know what I was going to sell. And on the outside of the swap meet, they had these river rocks. So I would just like collect them and then paint them. And then I told my dad I wanted to sell them. And my dad was like the ultimate salesperson. I mean, they used to joke he could sell ice to Eskimos. And so he told me that he helped me start the business. He's like, okay, we're going to sell them as paperweights. As soon as I give people change, you're going to ask them if they want to buy one, not before. And he like taught me the semantics of like opportunity and having some and like and likability, right? He's like, people are going to buy them because you're cute and they have 50 cents. Like that, no one likes change. He's like, they'll have 50 cents and you'll ask them now. If you ask them before they make the sale, they won't have the opportunity and they might find it annoying. So it's like, I'm going to hand them their change. You're going to ask them and be really polite. And it worked. I mean, I sold enough to buy my own swap meet place. And the other day I was trying to remember if that was like $100 or $50. But I was able to buy my own little spot at the swap meet. And I just remember going around asking every single shop if they had any extra inventory they were going to throw away that I could then sell at my shop. But I did, and I made like so much money from this little swap meet place. Like I remember buying Christmas presents for all my family. Like it was just such a fun place. And I think that's like where I really had the foundation of like always knowing that I could make my own money.
Right. Very cool. What a great story. Let's shift gears a little bit and start talking about leadership and team leaders in general. Obviously, you have run a mortgage team for many years, so you've been in that role of team leader. And I deal primarily with when it comes to team leaders, I deal in the real estate space, brokerage space. Tell me, like, what are the qualities of a good team leader? You're around teams that are doing really well and some teams that are struggling, but what are some key things that you see in good leaders in our industry right now?
Yeah, so I think great leadership really comes down to vision and culture. And I know that those are two really big cliches, but oftentimes I find that the biggest obstacle with teams is that the leader on the team's only objective is to make more money for themselves.
Right.
And they don't really have a plan. They're just like, oh, I just need to grow a team. That's the next step on my trajectory for my career. Mm-hmm. And leadership is about what you're solving, right, for the end user. So like for your clients, why are you building a team? Mm-hmm. And what does your team do to uniquely solve their issues? And then have you created a roadmap for success for the people that work for you? Mm-hmm. And oftentimes I find that there is no plan, there's no structure, there's no training. And it's because they don't truly understand outside of wanting to make more money and wanting to grow, because that's the thing they think is the next step that they've done, right? So like there's just like this missing piece of what I'm really solving for the world and how do I put that together with the right people and set the right boundaries, the right guidelines, the right training, support, tools, etc.
Right. And it's impossible to figure out the right people, the right training, the right tools without a vision and a culture in place, right? Because that's where it all starts. That's the foundation of any leading any kind of a team or an organization. Is if you don't know where that North Star is, then and your core values, your mission statement, your vision, your target market, okay, for not just clients, but what's your target market for agents to be on your team, you know, and getting those core values, vision matched up with yours is really the key component to the whole thing, from the time you hire them to retaining them. So many times, I mean, you've seen it, I've seen it over and over and over. We as team leaders just hire anyone that can fog a mirror to fill a seat, and then spend 6 months training them, all the time and energy that goes into that, only to find out that they're just not a good fit. And 9 times out of 10, when we talk about what went wrong there, what caused that divorce, it's It's the fact that there was probably no core values, no vision, no mission statement, and no roadmap to success for the agents that are on the team. What other good things? What other things, like if you think about some of your most successful team leaders out there that you're working with, vision, culture, what else are they really good at?
Generating leads. I mean,
Yeah.
you have to be ultimately your primary job outside of having a direction is to generate business.
Right, right. That's huge. I mean, it's probably the number one thing that agents are looking for when they say, "What are you looking for to join a team?" They're looking for opportunities, right? Which are leads. If you can't offer those opportunities, then why would anyone, see any value in the team? Now, that being said, I always tell team leaders, brokers that are interviewing these folks, if that's all that they're focused on, then you're asking for a problem there too. I mean, there's got to be other things that they're looking for. Another big thing that I see in the really successful team leaders is having really strong accountability in place. Where they sit down with their agents at the beginning of the year, come up with a business plan that's driven by what that team member wants, that agent wants to earn, or what kind of goals do they want to hit for that year, and then holding their hand and guiding them down that path to that success that they're looking for. A lot of teams out there just give agents leads and teach them some scripts and say, have fun, good luck. And that's just not an efficient, not a good way to run a team. I mean, you got to be meeting with your team at least once a week and meeting with your agents one-on-one. I mean, you start talking to some of these team leaders and they're like, I don't have time for that. I don't have time to meet with my people one-on-one, or even I don't have time to do weekly team meetings. What kind of things, I know you're big on accountability. Time management is a big deal to you, but what kind of things do you see team leaders doing that are successful at holding their agents accountable? What kind of practices are they using to hold their agents accountable out there?
Well, they have standards. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like the one other thing that I notice is it's not a flaw, but it definitely, well, it is a flaw actually, is that they just are too afraid to hold people accountable. It's like you have to have minimum metrics for how people behave and interact with your team. And if you are generating leads, it's like, well, what metric is acceptable? And then for me, I have reports that just tell me who's above the line, meaning they're performing above my minimum standards, and who's below the line. And there is a pathway to success with like, hey, if you're below the line, you have to stay and do a call night until you are now above the line. You have to go to script practice. There's things that are in place, because for me, it's my job as the leader to make sure that you are successful, but it's also my job as the team lead to protect the business baby. And people who cannot support the business baby are killing our business.
Right.
And so I read this Einstein quote once that said, or I'm going to butcher this, but it's essentially like you would never judge a goldfish on its ability to climb a tree. And if you did, that goldfish would feel like a failure its whole life. And I feel that way about team members. It's like, these are my metrics. I'm going to hold you accountable to this. But if you fail, I'm not going to keep trying to beat you over the head with it. I'm going to give you a pathway to success. I'm going to talk to you about it. I'm going to commit myself to training, but it's like 3 strikes, you're out. It's like, I don't have enough time to change someone. Like you have to be committed to changing. You have to be talented enough to change. And we just have to be adults about it. For me, that pathway to success and exit are very important. And a lot of team leaders lack the structure. And if they do have the structure, they lack the balls. So
Right. Yeah, because they're afraid they're going to lose them. Right. And then they have to go recruit and find another someone to replace them. The other big thing that, I mean, and you didn't say it, but I know this is what you practice when it comes to leadership and accountability, is a lot of times team leaders get focused on the results and not the activities that produce the results, right? So they'll just say, we need to sell X amount of homes, or you need to sell X amount of homes to stay on this team. But then they're not checking in to see if they're doing the activities that even bring those results, i.e., keeping a call worksheet where they fill out how many calls they're making every day, how many contacts they're making, and how many appointments they're setting. Okay, so team leaders need to focus more on the activities that lead to the results and not the results. Wouldn't you agree with that?
100%. I mean, like, I think it's the activities that lead, it's the skill set, it's the level of commitment. Like I was at a team meeting and they were saying that the part-time agents could do it 3 times a week. And I was like, no, it's like, it's every day. You might not be able to do the amount that everyone does every day, but you can do something every day. And it's
Right.
like, and I had said something about how, there's a book on dating that says that, if he doesn't text back or he isn't making the calls, he's just not that into you. And I'm like, you're just not that into real estate. Like
Right.
at some point in my career, 2008, I wasn't that good at sales. Like I put in all of the effort, all the activities. And at one point I was having to get a job in the evening time, right? So I applied at the gas station because I was so committed to getting the day job right that I was like, okay, I've got to work nights to pay my bills. There was
Mm.
never a part of me that was like, I'm only half in. I was so in, I was willing to take a night job to make it happen.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I just find that there's so much about it. Yes, it's activity, it's output, but it's skill set, it's commitment, it's like who you hang out with. There's so much about it.
Hmm. Hmm. And I think one of the biggest things also that when business is good, okay, like the last few years when we've been cruising along and everyone wanted to buy or sell a house, it was pretty easy, okay, and the money was flowing into a lot of these teams. And Warren Buffett says it best when he says, when the tide goes out, that's when you get to see who's been swimming naked. And there's a lot of people, a lot of team leads out there, a lot of teams that have been swimming naked. In other words, they haven't been putting in place systems and processes and accountability and so forth. And that's easy to, it kind of goes behind the scenes when you're making money. You just don't pay attention to that stuff. But all of a sudden, when the music stops and you don't have a chair to sit in, it gets a little scary, and you're like, oh my gosh, what happened here? And then you jump on your team's ass and you try to make up for what you should have been doing all this time, which was holding them accountable and practicing, getting into good habits. The other thing you said about the goldfish trying to climb a tree, a great analogy for a lot of teams that just expect their agents to be really good at calling leads. Okay. A lot of people will say, oh yeah, I can call leads. I'll get on the phone and blah, blah, blah. Well, then, 2 weeks later, they're not calling anyone, or they're just terrible on the phone for whatever reason. Some people just don't have that skill set. And if
But you
that's
have
a,
to develop that skill set. You're not just born with it. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, I think that I'm a really good salesperson and it's been refined over years. And there's parts of it that are natural in terms of like tonality and, being friendly. But majority of it is like frameworks that I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
yes, so my big thing is that, yes, a leader determines who is on the team and they're responsible for the roadmap to success, the training, the skill set,
Mm-hmm.
and also picking the right kind of human to be on the team.
Right.
Like, just because you're willing to call leads doesn't mean you're the right fit. Just because, and a lot of times, like in this market, people were just so busy that because again, they're just like determined to do more, they had these teams that they put very little time and attention to, and now they have all this overhead.
Right.
Like for me, the number one rule in business is to stay in business and to be profitable. And as hard as it is, like some of them don't need actual teams. They just need to scale it back to themselves so they can be profitable again.
Right.
Team is like the idea of a team means that you've made it, but like a lot of teams just aren't very profitable. And I'm guilty of this like 100%, is I used to have a really big team, do a bunch of numbers, and it was so cost intensive that I wasn't really making that much more money than people doing a
Mm-hmm.
lot less than me. So
Right.
like a team sometimes is just an ego boost versus like an actual profitability boost.
100%. 100%. It's the number one worst reason, and probably the most common reason that people start teams. It's an ego thing. Okay. And they will literally, I had someone call me the other day, said, yeah, hey, I need you to check out our logo and branding to see if it would pass the sniff test with ADRE. And he said, we already have our hats and our hoodies ordered with this logo on it, and I need you to look at it. I said, well, I haven't even looked at your team agreement yet. Okay. Do you have a team? Oh no. What is that? I don't even know what a team agreement is. Do you have one that I can use? Or, I mean, so it's like, talk about getting the cart before the horse. So yeah,
Like the fact that they ordered swag. Do you know what I mean?
I guess that's more fun than putting the team together, but
the idea of a team, you know what I mean? It's because it's the next step in what people think is success.
Yeah. And I mean, Gary Keller said it best years ago: you don't hire people until you have to, right? Lead with revenue, that whole mindset. And you know, one of the biggest mistakes I see also is people thinking that, hey, I'll just find 8 people, put them on my team, and then I'll figure out what to do. And you know, you start going through questions like, okay, how are you going to get them leads? Well, you know, they can circle prospect and do open houses, and just anyway, for those team leaders that are kind of struggling out there, okay, a lot of them have some success selling homes, some of them more than others, and they take on this team thing, and all of a sudden they're drowning and they're not making money like they used to, and all of their time is spent putting out fires from people on the team. And you know, the biggest thing is they just don't, a lot of them just don't have the leadership component built into them. They've been acting like sales managers versus leaders. Okay, if someone's really struggling with leadership, but they still, instead of just firing everyone on the team and going back to being a solo agent again with an assistant, what could they do to maybe save the team, so to speak, if they're struggling?
My thing is that you just have to take it back to what's profitable and what's doable. And like, I've talked to a lot of people and just said, you know, do you really need this? Is this really what you need? It's like, it's very hard to let people down, and it's very hard to go backwards in people's minds. But it is also just temporary discomfort. And it honestly is some of the most freeing that you can do. Like, I had a gigantic team, and I had, you know, I got a divorce, and my life kind of went on pause for a hot minute, and scaling back was very mind-blowing to me and felt very shameful and humiliating and a lot of other things. And then once it was done, it was like, thank God that it's done. You know, it was so much pressure, so much relief. I get to rebuild something that's a lot more profitable and a lot more sturdy foundation wise. And like, but it was hard, and hard for all the things that scare us, like disappointment, rejection, humiliation, shame. And it, again, just very, very temporary, very short.
Yeah. And I think one of the biggest challenges, we kind of hit on it a little bit ago, for people that are struggling, is they kind of go back and forth between, okay, should I just burn the boats and start over? And in some cases, that's a pretty good decision, right? I mean, that, okay, I kind of jumped into this, didn't know what I was doing, made some mistakes. And there's times where you kind of have to think about doing that, because one of the other problems that you run into as a team leader, and this was something, you know, I struggled with when I ran a team, especially starting out, was constantly making changes and tweaks to the way you do things. Okay. And part of the reason that I did that early in my career is I didn't have that vision, that culture, that I didn't have a roadmap for it. I didn't have the foundation built. I just went ahead and built the walls and the roof, and before I put the foundation in. So over time, I just got more and more frustrated. And I think that's what happens with a lot of team leaders. They just get really frustrated, and they think, God, it was so much easier when I was just selling homes by myself. And it's like, duh. I mean, go back to that. Go back and get your numbers back up, because so many of them forget about that when they start the team, and all of a sudden they're not making money anymore. It's because the highest ROI thing they can do is sell homes. Okay. Now they find out that they're spending 75% of their time trying to figure out this team thing and 25% on the thing that brought them the most money and got them to where they're at. So, I mean, in 2017, 2016, I kind of made a decision that, hey, you know what? I'm going to go back to just doing it by myself. And if I get to a point where I have to hire someone, I will. But it was the best decision I ever made. My overhead went way down. Okay. My whole mental state got better overnight, and I got more profitable again. And, you know, if I need to hire agents again, so be it, but it will be one at a time and only on an as needed basis. And that's what I really try to push with the folks that I coach is, don't get a number in your head. What team leaders do, you've seen it, Lizy, is they're like, okay, if I get 10 agents and each of them sells 12 homes at an average price of $500,000 each and 2.5% commission, and I'm getting 20% and they're getting 80% or whatever, then, oh my gosh, I'm going to make $200,000 off these agents this year. Well, it never goes as planned. Okay. You've got the revolving door. You've got people that you hire that don't work out, which I can tell you right now, about 1 in every 10 agents end up being really good team players. And what happens to them after 2 or 3 years when they're making $200,000 or $300,000? All of a sudden they want to go start their own team, or they want to go to a brokerage that's flat fee and so forth. So it's just it's a challenging thing. It can be very rewarding, but you've got to build that foundation first, which goes back to what you started with, which is vision, culture, core values, mission statement, the whole 9 yards. What advice would you give to team leaders in this market right now? Because and what I mean by that is I'm talking to a lot of team leaders that, you know, people kind of have their heads down right now going, what the heck? This isn't what it was a year ago or 2 years ago when people were calling us looking to buy houses. Now we have to call them, and, you know, just the market shifted.
My advice is they have to get back to work. My advice is you can't be too good to do the dishes. You have to, they have to get back in the business, call their leads, close, do the thing, provide expertise, advice. People are shocked that I'm sitting open houses and doing circle prospecting and doing all the thing. And I'm like, I'm shocked you're not. Mm-hmm. I think it's so crazy to think that you would be like, well, the market's changed. Yeah, it always changes. Yeah. It changes all the time. And to expect that it would be so easy. And it's just, it's so, it's kind of ridiculous. And I don't mean that to be mean. It's just if you are a team leader, your job again is to originate deals, to provide that pathway to success. And the only way to do it is to get back in the business.
Lead by example, right?
Absolutely.
One of the biggest, craziest things that I've seen happen over the last 3 years, literally 3 years ago, everyone that had listings was sitting their own open houses. What do you see now? You see listing agents saying, so they'll say, I have an open house at 40th Street in Shea that if someone wants to sit an open house this weekend, it's available. That's where it started. Okay. Then it got to a point where I was seeing posts on Facebook saying, I will pay an agent $100 to sit my open house. I'm reading this and no one's jumping on it. And even comments coming in, $100 really isn't worth my time to do something like that. And these are agents not selling anything. Okay. But the crazy thing is that the listing agent is giving away that opportunity and willing to pay for the opportunity to sit an open house and meet buyers that are probably fairly motivated if it's 110 degrees outside and they're visiting open houses. So that's where we've gotten to. And unfortunately, it's going to take, this market's going to be a wake-up call for a lot of people. But I do think that team leaders do need to keep the morale up as well as they can, and give people hope. Okay, that yes, you can make money in this market. You just have to work harder than the next guy or gal. But yeah, I mean, we're in a different world now.
Yeah. And one other thing I will say that I think is really important, because I do find that you're the sum total of the 5 people that you hang out with. So if you are a leader who is confused and lost in this marketplace, you need to hang out with people that are, have expertise, that are educating themselves, that are learning different types of prospecting. You cannot build what you want only by knowing what you don't want. And if what you know is, I don't like my results right now, you have to seek out, well, what are results that you want and what are those people doing? And so I find that misery really does love company. And so the fact that like you would be paying people to do open houses in a market like this just tells me that they're hanging out with other people who've kind of given up.
Yeah.
Like, I want to put in the least amount of effort. And it's like, okay, well, this is the market that requires the most expertise, the most communication, the most value.
Mm-hmm. And where do leaders go to get that? I mean, networking groups. I mean,
Masterminds, networking, podcasting. I mean, you have to seek out really successful people. One of the agents that I work with, her husband or her boyfriend is like one of the most famous loan officers I've ever known. Like, he's not currently originating, but he's one of the most famous people in mortgages.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hi, would you mind setting an introduction to me? I want to be exposed to somebody who had built such a gigantic career, and I want to know what that person's like. I want to become friends. This is who I want to bring into my circle. Mm-hmm. And because if I'm the dumbest person, I know, at least for me, I'm always going to be trying hard to rise to the occasion.
Right.
Like, I don't want to just find other people who want to complain. I want to find the innovators, the people who have built it, the people who have an idea and a perspective and a direction.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And sometimes leaders need that someone from the outside looking in to give a different perspective, right? You get caught up just in what's going on with your team and get your own ideas of how to fix things or get things rolling and back on track again. And sometimes you need that extra set of eyes and ears to say, wait a minute, have you thought of this? Have you tried this? And if you're hanging around people that think the sky is falling and that, well, I'll just live off of my retirement for the next 2 years till the market gets better again. And like you said, the 5 people you hang around with are where you get your ideas and your motivation from, right?
But it's crazy to think that those things are just going to be available. Just like everything else, you have to seek it and create it.
Right.
Like, part of the reason that leaders make the big bucks is because they're supposed to be doing the hard things. They're supposed to be like leading the way, changing the way it works, providing the solutions that no one else can see.
Right.
If it was easy, everyone would walk around making $1 million with 6-pack abs.
Right.
It's supposed to be hard.
Right. Supposed to be hard is right. What about, you have a coach, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I have coaches. I have mentors. I have them in different categories. I have accountability partners.
How many coaches do you have right now?
I have one coach, Rick Ruby, who coaches me from the core coaching.
Yeah.
And he's coached me for a decade. So I love him, and he is the most tactical person I know of in real estate and mortgage. And then I have an entrepreneurial coach that has been helping me with a side business that I have. And then I have a couple of mentors that have done startups that have helped me a lot, like understanding that pathway. And then I have an accountability partner, another originator who lives in Texas, who's just like a lot more fierce than I am. She's way more extreme, believe it or not. And so she holds me accountable every morning. And then I hold 40 different agents accountable every morning.
40 different agents you work with right now on accountability.
On accountability. So I have to be extra accountable to hold them accountable.
Wow. And how often do you meet with those agents?
I run these first and 10 groups. So they have to, it's when they wake up, they got to get 5 things done. They put in a symbol, then they got 5 prospecting things and put in a symbol.
Wow, that's cool. And how often do you do like Zoom calls with them and
that's every day? And then I do, like this morning, I did a breakfast and learn with one of the groups.
Wow. Every day you talk to these agents.
I'm in it. I'm doing that when I wake up. The first one to wake up, I ping them.
That's awesome. Awesome. Okay. That's pretty much all I have on team leadership. I mean, I knew that you would be a wealth of knowledge, bringing you in to share some of your thoughts and ideas of what you're seeing is working and what's not working. And I think anyone who has a team right now or is thinking of starting a team, or any brokers out there that are running an organization with agents there, hopefully they were able to get something out of it. Obviously, if anyone has any questions or issues or just want to chat, you can go to the link below that to schedule a 30-minute call with me. Don't charge anything. Just listen to what you're going through and give you some pointers on what we can do to help get you unstuck if you're stuck on anything. And obviously, I will have a link down below on how to reach Lizy and her group. Again, I really appreciate, Lizy, you taking the time today to chat with all of these folks. A lot of them, like I said, probably already know you, and appreciate you coming in and sharing your thoughts.
Seriously, a huge honor of mine. And anybody who's listening, if you do not schedule this call with Bob, I think you would be out of your mind. He is also a wealth of knowledge, has done everything from database to land deals, commercial. I mean, he's run a big team, a small team, internet leads. I mean, he's done a lot in his real estate career, and you would be getting free advice for 30 minutes. I mean, it's a no-brainer.
All right, guys. Well, thank you again, Lizy. Everyone, thanks for tuning in today. And obviously, if you need anything at all, just reach out at any time. Have a great day.